Welcome to the next episode of Monster Hunter World. Sorry about the earlier episodes where there really wasn't any voice, but I wasn't altogether sure if I was going to be putting any voice in them. But I figured I'd go ahead and try it at least with this episode and see how it sounds. Okay. First of all, so far, this episode is going to be a exploration and gathering mission. Not altogether all that important, as it's mostly just going to be a long episode involving me gathering resources, exploring the surrounding areas, and fighting some large monsters if I come across them and I'm able to handle them. There's been some armor changes since the last episode. I've got a new blade, which is the Blooming Sword, or the Blooming Blade, which is basically the same as I've been using, except for it's got a poison element on it. And I'm using the Great Jagras, I think that's what it's called.
Oi, oi!
Jagas, or something along those lines. Jaggers. I'm using the Jagger's Mel as well. Should help keep some of the littler monsters away from me as I'm fighting the larger ones. Alright. Well, at any rate, this exploration mission is basically aimed at gathering some resources I need for a few armor upgrades, as well as getting to know the surrounding area a little better, where some of the harder to get resources are, as well as maybe a few exciting fights and knocking off some of my investigation missions. Also, if I get a bit quiet at times, I'll go ahead and apologize now, as I'm not a real big talker, so please forgive me if I get kind of quiet, or sometimes I may forget that I'm even airing that I'm even got my voice going on. Oh, and as a mental note, any episodes that are expedition based, if you're not all into the long exploration, not really focused gameplay, then feel free to skip these episodes, as they're just going to be a lot longer than normal. And there really isn't any real focus to them other than gathering some resources I might need later on, as well as upgrading some of my equipment. Okay, so material-wise, my focus is on trying to get some more smoke nuts, if that's what they're called. They are very useful in helping create different types of throwable traps, like poison powder, stuff like that. Another thing that's going to be useful is gathering up some raw meat and some different types of status effect based mushrooms, like toadstools, parashroom, because you can use those to poison. Oh, that was a mistake. That was a bit of a rough start. Fingers got all confused, so I kind of messed up my inputs. Where is he? That's odd. Wait, is he just circling around? Huh. What is he doing? While he's trying to figure out where he wants to go, we'll gather up a few things in this area. But, as I was saying, gathering up the poison shrooms, the parashrooms, stuff like that, give me the ability to make, poisoned meat in a way that can be used for traps that will become, fairly useful for the larger monster, for some of the harder and more difficult monsters I'll be facing later on. As a heads up, well, wasn't paying much attention. As a heads up, the reason why I'm wanting to farm this particular monster is he gives me gear that is really good with poison, which will be useful later on when we start fighting the Ajetas or Ajetas, whatever it's called. Basically, the giant TRex thing. I'll probably get the name that more accurate here in a little while once I've managed to read it again. Okay. Shit. Pay attention. Yep. Oh, this is a little embarrassing. Normally I don't do this bad. Roll. There we go. This particular monster doesn't really need any real hardcore tracking on him, even though you can, for the sake of increasing your monster manual's information. But when fighting him, he generally sticks roughly in about the same areas, and it's usually pretty predictable as where he's going to go when he runs. Anjanath was the name of the T-Rex that I was talking about earlier. I just saw his footsteps, or his prints. Means he's usually in this area. He's not a creature you want to take really early, as he's very, very dangerous, along with the Rathus as well. They're both extremely dangerous for this area early in the game. Grab this tail. Oh, also, if you're wondering why every so often I get a one of the little Jaggers or Jaggers kind of following me around, it has to do with when I met up with the bug hunters. When you befriend them, they give you the ability in the area to every so often your little cat buddy will get the ability to temporarily tame one of them to help us out. That was a lucky strike. There we go, smoke nuts. I haven't played too much into the game, other than a little bit of extra gameplay on my own, but it's usually in a separate file so that I can keep us relatively in the same areas, I guess. But kind of hope they brought back the wait, oh, okay. Kind of hope they brought back the ability to farm items, um, like they did in one of the previous games, where you could just grow some of these nuts that you need. It'll help. It would help actually to get some of the more difficult items to come across. For example, like these smoke nuts, you really don't come across them too often, and they're a little bit hard to see where they grow. And while some people may not use them a whole lot, I find them particularly useful when creating different types of smokes. Poison smoke will help, would be particularly useful against the Anjanath. Because he's particularly weak against poison. And then smoke powders or making smoke bombs is useful too, especially when you come across something that's going to be a bit problematic and you're not able to easily hide from them. And you just throw one of those down and then get out of dodge if you're not quick enough to run without them. Oh, and I will be making an attempt on fighting the Anjanath before I move on to the next area. Not sure if I'm going to be successful or not, but I'm gonna try and get him knocked down at least once, because there is actually a campsite in the trees that requires some skin from him. That would be particularly useful to actually get your hands on, not to mention the armor that you can potentially get from him as well. Like I said, not sure if I'm going to be able to pull it off, but with how difficult he is, I'm going to need to make sure that I have some pretty potent uh, several different types of poisons, and make sure that my armor is up to snuff. And not only that, but he can use every part of his body as a weapon. It doesn't matter where you're at around him, he will hit you. Not particularly sure if it'd be a little bit easier to try and take him with a ranged weapon, but I'm thinking no matter which weapon you go with, he's going to be particularly difficult. Mainly because if you go with a ranged weapon, then you're going to have to deal with his fireballs he fires out of his mouth. Where if you be underneath him, it's a little bit easier to avoid that. And then of course, there is the issues with when you're underneath of him. Make sure you stay out of the reach of his mouth, because that attack does the most damage. His feet, staying underneath of him, while you will get hit, it won't be as heavy of strikes as it would be if you were to be hit by, let's say, his tail or his mouth. And especially those fireballs. Those fireballs are pretty devastating if you don't have some good fire resistance of based armor. So we got a wrath loss on this mission in this area too. It will probably be a little while before I attempt the wrath loss, because I know in previous games he was something of a monster that you really didn't mess with unless you had some pretty good equipment to go along with it. And as I haven't really unlocked any type of equipment that works against his weakness, I'll probably just wait a little while before I attempt him. I might give him a go later on, but because he's mostly in the air, I might have to put together a one of the bow guns in order to help with it. I don't think my blade would be too useful against him. Not unless I can find a good way to knock him off out of the air and keep him out of the air for extended periods of time. In case you're wondering, when every once in a while you'll notice that I will fire a net at a random area if you can't see them very well. Every so often I'll notice that there is a little creature kind of scurrying around on the ground. If you fire your nets at them, you can catch them. If you manage to land it anyways. Every once in a while, you'll get a mission from one of the field investigators asking you to catch one. They'll give you some little goodies for catching them, but their main purpose is primarily decoration. You can put them you can actually put them into your bedroom as a kind of a pet. And like with most things in this game, different critters have different levels of rarity in which they show up. Some are harder to show up based on where you have to find them. But they're as far as I know, they're not exactly a necessity to actually go out of your way to collect unless you're trying to be a completionist, or there's a particular one you're looking for a mission, or maybe even one that you like the look of and you want to keep it as a pet. So far, my first impressions of the game, it's actually, they did a really good job with it. Although so far, I don't know if it has to do with my experience with games of this type. It could very well be a side effect of my time playing on Dark Souls and Demon Souls games. But so far, it seems to be a lot easier than the past ones. But then again, it could be simply, like I said, here lately I've been playing more and more games kind of like this. So it may be that Dark Souls some of my experience from Dark Souls translated over a little bit, and as a result, the game got a little bit easier. Speaking of Dark Souls, great game. While that being said, both these games, while they may seem at first fairly similar in terms of gameplay, like you'll run around killing things and progressing, the difficulties are vastly different. Similar type of gameplay in terms of how you play. You get punished heavily for your mistakes, but this game you're not as heavily punished as you would be in, let's say, Dark Souls. Looks like I'm full up on materials, so let's make a trip back and dump this stuff off and see if we can make anything new. That being said, though, because they are fairly similar in terms of, you have to really think about what you're going to do beforehand. That could potentially, if you've played them, then this would be you would probably notice that the game is a little bit easier, especially when you're used to that type of gameplay. Looks like I'm low on money, so I might need to run a few random missions in order to make a little bit. Selling things is not very useful. While it can get you a little bit here or there, unless you have an extreme amount of some of the more rare materials, I would just hold on to your materials, or unless you're running out of space. But for the most part, just keep your materials. You'll never know when you actually need them.
So
And
now we need to protect the scholars. Let's regroup at the Wildspire Waste.
that being said, a lot of the materials that you get can be used in a nice little function up at the cantina where you can have your handler cook you some food. Um, some of the items you find can be used in that type of food, and depending on how you put it together, you can get some nice little bonuses. But it usually requires you to think a little bit and plan out what you want to do beforehand. And also, since it does use up materials, it's nice to have to go and farm out certain materials if there's a particular type of dish you want that you like to go out regularly with. Alright, let's see. Ooh. Well, there's one of the... Is it? Yep. We got one of the... Managed to get the materials I needed for one of the armor pieces that I was looking to build. In case you guys are getting a little aggravated with me how I'm kind of mishmashing armor, I'm not wearing sets. That would probably only be necessary when I actually come across armor that has set bonuses. Because the way Dragon Souls works, especially early in the game, if you want... Not Dragon Souls, but Monster Hunter. The way Monster Hunter works is that if there's a specific skill that you want, let's say for example, with the Pukai Coil, increases poison attack, then I want to equip pieces of armor that also has that, because you can't increase the stat or the skill on individual armor. The way you boost that up is by equipping more pieces with the same stat. So mixing and matching to get your perfect set is kind of a must, because a lot of the armor on here doesn't make sense with the skills they have in place if you just wear the sets. At least to me, they don't make sense. Okay. But that's really not something you need to worry about this early in the game anyways, because it would be kind of hard for you to actually find what you're looking for. To find armors and pieces of equipment that will match up with the skills you need. Probably won't happen until later on, especially when you get into the more... As you unlock new types of armor, you eventually start finding skills that overlap with other armors. Alright. Oh, by the way, don't waste your nutrients. Nutrients are very useful, especially your max potions. Don't waste them. They are relatively expensive to make and require a lot of grinding in order to stockpile in any amount of them. But they're useful when you're going into a particularly difficult fight and you're going to need the extra health, because they permanently boost your well, not permanently, but while in your for a certain amount of time, they'll boost the size of your maximum health gauge. Now the max potion has a bonus to it. The bonus to the max potion is that it also restores your health. I think I'll go out and get a couple more times. See what more I can find. I want to at least get my bouquet coil. That will help with the fight against the Anjantha, or the Anjanth, or Janath, whatever. I keep forgetting its name. It'll be useful in that fight because it increases poison buildup, and because I do have a poison-based weapon as well as my Palico, or whatever they're called, the cat. It will help me poison it a lot faster. While I'm at it, since I need a little bit of money, I will run one of the... Go ahead and knock out this event mission down here. It's a good way to make... It's a good way to make a little... make us a decent amount of money. The mission's called Chew the Fat. Basically, you just gotta fight... manage to kill 2 great Jaggers, which really aren't that bad. They're actually pretty easy to kill versus their past incarnations. The last incarnations were pretty rough because they moved around a whole lot and it didn't take much for them to run away. But if you have vouchers, you can use your vouchers on this mission and make an easy 6K. If not, then the 3K is still nice on its own. Oh, while I'm waiting for the mission to load, I'll go ahead and show you guys the oven roast. In the oven roast, this is where you can actually ask your handler to cook different types of materials. And you really won't know what she's going to make until after she cooks it. And there's different outcomes for the types of food. It's mainly, let's say, let me find one. I got some spare raw meat, so let's try that one. Oh. Looks like it takes time for that to cook. Okay. Well, we'll come back to it after a mission or so and see if she's done or not. And then we'll find out what we get from it. I haven't worked around with it too much, so I'm not 100% sure what all she gives. But my guess, it's based on the food. It's like, for example, the raw meat will probably give me either burnt, a normal steak, or a well done steak, depending on what's going on. Oh, also, there is a benefit to keep grabbing the TRex. After you've actually finished with the more of those, the higher you level up your research for that particular animal, eventually it gets to the point to where even if you don't have that, your bar automatically will start out at a certain level. For example, if you got a 1-star, then you'll automatically be able to track its location. You won't have to hunt out its tracks. And then later on, when you max it out, then you eventually be able to have all the information you need for tracking it in the field. And as for out of the field, you gradually get more information as to what they drop, their weak spots, stuff like that. Another handy little aspect is that it also increases the amount of research points you get from hunting one. So if you're farming research points, then that's a good way to go about doing it. Later on, I might make a video to showcase the different types of weapons. I'm not 100% sure. It'll probably be an extra video. Um, but I might do it. I'm not 100% sure on it. It would be useful for those who are not quite sure as to what weapons they might want to choose. But the game itself does have video. There's my target. Does have actual video demonstrations already inside the game that gives you a basic idea of how the weapon works and talks about it a little bit. So I don't know if there's going to be any benefit with me making showcasing the weapons outside of showing you how they would work out in the field. And a kind of a tip for new players who are new to the series. Make sure that when you keep your weapon sharpened, don't let it get too dull, because it will make things a lot harder for you if you don't keep track of your weapon. And I know sometimes it can be kind of tough to actually go off and get that sharpened, because it does take a lot of time to sharpen. But in past incarnations of the game, it used to be a lot harder, because you didn't have your little pet to distract them at times. You'd actually have to hopefully knock them down enough to where they either run off or you manage to hide from them long enough to get it sharpened. Plus, on this one, they seem to have made certain utility-based items unlimited, which is nice actually, because they used to be you used to have to make like extra whetstones, which was more time you actually spent doing a lot of unnecessary, what I consider unnecessary farming. You guys probably noticed how I took this guy down pretty quickly. I do have several things on me that increase my attack strength, but one of the things you should note that I did manage to poison him in the fight, which, if they are susceptible to poison, it will drain them pretty quickly, depending on how much health they have.
Bright moss can be used as slinger ammo. Launch it at walls to eliminate dark areas.
So it is very
like
useful.
The inside of a cave, for example.
It is very useful to actually bring along equipment that have some type of status effect on them. While elemental like fire, lightning, water, all that stuff is can be useful at times, the only thing they really do is give you a little bit of a damage bonus based on what you're fighting. Where versus status effects, I find to be more useful, because when they actually trigger, they give you they actually will stun, slow down, and give you or even in some form hinder the enemy that you're fighting. While the sleeping potions, while the sleeping are useful, I'd primarily use them only for capturing, because as far as I know, sleeping is not. I'll have to actually test to verify, but sleeping is not a long-term thing. you can, I'm guessing if you smack them while they're not 100% sure on that, but my guess is they probably do. Poison I find really useful because once they get it, it takes a long time to wear off, and by the time it does wear off, they've taken a lot of damage. And every time you strike them after their poison, just increases the amount of time that the poison stays on them. Paralyzing or paralysis is actually pretty useful. It will give you a long-term stun that they have to shake off. While it may not be as long as some of the other status effects, it's still pretty useful in its own right. But even though status effects and all these have their uses, you also need to keep an eye on what the enemies are, what the monsters themselves are weak against, or waverings, I think is what they call them. Because like the Puke, they're not. He's a poison type on his own, so my poison won't be particularly useful because he could probably shrug it off, if not take any, maybe not even take damage at all. So you got to really keep an eye out on what they may or may not be weak against, because that would actually help speed up your fights. And if you're a little bit weaker than you should be when you're a little bit less prepared than what you should be when you go against some of these creatures, then it will help improve your odds. Might make an attempt at the Anjanath before I end this episode. If I beat him, awesome. If not, no, it's not that big of a deal because it really wasn't a plan to fight to begin with. But I will make an episode where I make a legitimate attempt against him when I have everything I need to actually fight him with. But I will post the episode whether I win or not. So if I get my ass handed to me, so be it. I'll probably try him a couple of times if I do, but I'll post it regardless. I will go ahead and state this. There will be at times when I actually don't do these long episodes where I'm just focusing on gathering, because I know some people don't like that kind of thing. I know they get pretty boring because there's not a whole lot going on. I won't post a whole lot of them. I will post some, but a lot of these I'll be doing on my own time outside of actual streaming, unless there's a reason for me to do so. But I will do at least one major expedition, long-term episode for at least each area, maybe two, so that you guys can can potentially find items that may be hidden really well, if I can find them myself, or find them myself. But other than that, I'll try to keep them to the minimum as possible. Oh, and another thing. You may have noticed in my earlier episodes there were a few recording issues. I'm not sure if that's my internet that's having the issue or if it's something that's going on inside of PlayStation Network itself. But I'll try new to the YouTube thing, so haven't quite figured out how to. I haven't figured out how to use their the tools embedded in the website to actually edit my videos properly in order to edit that stuff out. And as far as I know, because I am streaming, it goes it it's kind of harder for me to actually I have to figure out how to kind of edit them as best I can. I tried using the embedded tools once. It didn't go very well. I ended up cutting out one of the troubled spots, but before I saved it, I noticed that it also messed up the audio. Because of that, I reverted it back to its original. And this particular video, I don't know if it's the video itself or what, but it wouldn't let me actually, or if it's just some function inside of YouTube by itself, but it wouldn't let me go in and actually edit the audio. So I wasn't able to actually resync the audio up with the video footage. So I just said screw it and kind of reset the everything in place. So like I said, I'll try to keep that kind of issue to a minimum. When I move over to the when I actually do computer-based videos, I'll have some software that might help. But once again, because I am still new at this type of thing, I'll have to take me a little bit of time to actually catch up. Okay. Let's see, get a few more things. Probably try and leave this area in just a minute after I get a few more items, and then come back in and see if the Puke comes back, so that I can take another run at him to potentially get the items I need for the coil, because that coil is going to be fairly useful when I go up against the Anjantha, or the Anjanath, however you want to say it. Plus, doing these little extra things will allow me to collect more armor, or armor stones, so that I can improve the defense of my armor to actually increase my chances of surviving the fight. Because I'm still not 100% sure I'm going to be able to actually do the fight at this point. But with all the traps, with all the items and the traps that I'm going to be putting together, it should turn out okay. I just gotta make sure I plan my fights out as well as I can, and it should be alright. The Godshoe whiskers must be pretty rare, because I've only come across one, and I've hit those just about every time I find those things. So kind of need them for I think it's a boot or a pants that are used that makes it so that you can move around in the water a little bit easier. Not very useful in this area, but will have its uses later on, especially if they introduce the water-based water-based wyvern that were in the previous games. So far, it doesn't look like they're going to, because there's been a number of body of waters, and there was one instance when I actually did go underwater, but I don't know if, and it kind of looked like it was automated. It just kind of rushed me through it. So I don't know if something I did or what, but there may not be actually underwater fighting in this one. Which would be a little disappointing, because even though it was kind of hard and a little bit annoying, it was still a nice little function, because of course there would be certain situations where you would need to fight underwater in this type of world. Okay, let me try it. These birds are so friggin' annoying. I've tried catching them many times. It may be I need to get a stealth item or something, but damn it. I probably need to raise my stealth stat, because I can't seem to catch them. Alright, let's go. Let me check my items. Let's see. Yeah, I'm almost full. I'll go ahead and head back and see if there's a puke up in the next area, the next time I come out here. If not, so be it. We'll give the I'll give the Anjanath a try and see if it actually works out for us. If not, it's no big deal. Like I said, there will be an episode of me doing a legitimate attempt. Oh. I had a brain fart. I'm actually here on a mission, not an expedition. I should have been looking for this, how much time do I got left? Not too bad. I kind of forgot what I was doing here. I thought I was on a regular, expedition. Alright, let me go hunt this guy down. I already see him on the map, so it won't take long. That's who was talking to me earlier. Okay, that was a little weird. Got an adamant pill out of it, though. Still no whiskers. Alright, I might have to try and run an investigation in order to get the whisker, as it seems to be a rare item. Which is honestly not that big of a deal. I was kind of saving the investigations to knock out when I go multiplayer. Because I will have some episodes that will be multiplayer based. I was kind of waiting on the investigations for those, because some of those are actually quite rough, especially the ones that give you like 3 targets, and they require that you go and hunt all 3 targets. I know there was one earlier that I thought was kind of ridiculous. They back and sharpen my weapon. It's not a mistake. I don't know if that purple dripping from his mouth means I poisoned him, or... No, I got him. He's poisoned. Also, some of the in-game hunts, I'll probably be doing multiplayer because they're a little more difficult. But I will I will do a solo run on those hunts as well. But primarily, I'm gonna do those multiplayer, at least for the first run, so I can get an idea how difficult they're going to be. Not 100% sure. If they're anything like the past games, then they're going to be pretty tough. Especially when you get up to the stronger variations of the dinos or the monsters that we're already fighting. Oh, got all kinds of goodies. We tapped out Jaggers, or the Jaggers, and maybe I'll have to go talk to the old imp about it, see what he has to say, if I've finished that up or not. But then again, they might actually keep leveling up, which I guess at a certain point would be kind of redundant. If that's the right word to use for it. Because there'd be no need to keep boosting something after. Unless you're just keep doing it just to get the increased research points. Okay. Woo. Alright, let's look at my research levels. Yep, the Jaggers is done. Let's see. It looks like... Oh no, looks like there is still something for me to keep working on. The, ranking up my, Scoutfly. level on it. Because I done finished the research points of it, but scout flies looks like I still need to work on them, so that gives me a reason to keep pushing through with them. But as I was saying earlier in your monster field guide, as you increase your research rank with them, you start seeing more and more information for them. Like on physiology, you'll find out what parts are breakable, what they're weak against and strong against, and what weapons are good at, what items are good at breaking what. And then the low rank rewards here tells you pretty much what you can get from what part if you break it, and as well as how often you can actually get it. I thought at one point there was a option to see what the rare items were. Let me see. But it doesn't look like it's going to say anything about it. Let me look at this guy right fast. Okay, so it kind of depends on what you're doing. Alright. So, I need to dump materials, and I'm going to see about hunting another puke, and then I'm going to make an attempt on the Anjanath. I'm not going to take my entire resource with me. I'm going to have some stuff. I'm going to go out there with some stuff, but not as much as I'm going to at my legitimate attempt. Because I'm going to actually bring some traps around along and some other little extra things to help improve my odds. But either way I go, this is probably going to be a pretty rough fight. Actually, let me go ahead and give him an attempt. Give me a moment. I'm gonna go grab me some fluids, and then I'll grab a few things, and we'll make a quick attempt on him, and then after that attempt, we'll do a quick run, knock out another puke, and see if I can get the items I need for my coil. And if I can't get my coil after that, then I'll probably do some grinding off on my own to get the items I need for it before I make the episode that I'm going to dedicate to killing that thing. Alright, I'll be back in just a moment. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. I needed to get a little bit of fluids and some caffeine in my blood for this. I will in the future be making some little episodes that I'm probably going to do here soon that are just going to be smaller episodes that are going to be based on taking down in certain types individual large-scale creatures, kind of a little bit of a strategy guide to give people who are having issues a little bit of a hint on how to do it. I probably won't be using different types of weapons, so they'll probably be based off of the blade. But if necessary, I can build a little guide on how to take them down with the different types of weapons. But I'd probably have to do a little bit of work in the training yard in order to get used to them, so I'll know how to use them. Because the blade, while I do have some experience with some of the other weapons, the blade is typically my go-to. So it's about the only one I really know how to use to any degree of proficiency. Although on some earlier games that are very similar to this, I did use ranged-based weapons. I think the game was called God Eater. Another really good game if you like monster hunting type games. It's actually really similar. Okay, that gives me that, and okay, manage items. I'm gonna grab me some of my poison smoke. Since I'm not doing a large attempt, I'm just going to bring some basic items. Okay, let's see. Trap kit. There it is. Put 2 on me, but I'll need to put some in my box to make... Jesus, they're expensive. Okay, let's see if I can't make any traps. I might bring 1 trap with me. But when I do my... if this doesn't go... If I can't make it through this, then my main attempt, I'm going to have my armor up to where I need it to be. Everything that I can do, put to get ready with at this current stage in the game to make the attempt. I think. Oh, that's right. I was going to look at making a trap. Let's see. I don't have gunpowder? I thought I had a lot of gunpowder right there. Oh, probably higher ranking gunpowder. Alright, let's see. I can make a pitfall. I'll make a couple pitfalls. And I'll make a couple shock traps. And although, whenever I can start buying throwing knives, these knives would be actually useful too. Alright, I'm gonna bring 1 pitfall and 1 shock with me just in case. Okay, there's that. Okay, and there's that. And I need some bait. Let's see. I'll bring poisoned meat, my tinged meat, and I'm gonna bring some of my drugged meat. Alright, well, this is gonna be a good first try. Well, let me do one more thing before I go at it, and that is to see if there's any part of my armor that I can upgrade to have the increased defense to improve my chances. I might need to bring a couple nutrients with me as well.
That reminds me.
Okay, let's see. First of all, let's look and... Nope. Okay. So that's maxed. That's maxed. I don't think I want... No. Yeah, I'll go ahead and upgrade these. I got 12. Okay, that works. And since I'm not going to upgrade this piece because I'm actually switching that out. And as for my hunter greaves, I'm probably going to switch them out as well. But I'm not sure if there's anything a botanist would be useful. Yeah. Wait a minute, will it actually later on boost? Okay. Actually not a bad idea given what I'm actually doing. So I'll go ahead and upgrade the pants for this and put them on. Here we are. Okay, there's that. I don't know why I told it not to equip it, but alright. I don't have any defense against fire, so I'm going to have to avoid his fire damage at all costs. At least it's not a negative, so that's a plus. Let me grab some nutrients. Grab a mega potion just in case. Where's it at? Okay. Huh. It seems to be missing. I know I made some. There it is. Okay, I'll take 2. I got some spares. Alright, well, now that that's taken care of, let's take the first attempt at this, and then, depending on if I win or lose or not, depends on if this particular episode ends now or later. If I beat him, then I'm gonna end the episode now, after it. But if not, then I'm going to do one more run to kill up Puke and see if I can get the last of the items I need. And if I don't, then I'll try and get it on my off the air so that I'll have everything ready for the dedicated episode to taking this big guy down. But I do want to I do want to kill him before I leave this area, and I'm actually at the we're actually at the point now to where I just have one mission and then we leave the next area. So will help me determine whether or not if I can even beat him on the legitimate try. So I'm gonna kind of do this as a trial run. All right, so let's see. There we go. And I don't think I have the. Okay, is this? Nope, that's. Alright, well, we got someone over here we can talk to. We'll do this right quick. Wait. Is that. Huh. Must be around the other side. Huh. Come back up there and take a look.
Marvelous.
Actually, that might not be a bad idea to do. The bug trappers, befriending them also gave me, every so often, if I find one, or a group of them, then we can potentially talk them into joining us on the, on our exploration of the area. So, if I can find some of them, then I might go ahead and do that as an extra bit of an extra helping hand against this thing. High pressure. Okay. Alright, what I'm thinking about doing is gathering up enough tracks so that I can find his destination. That way I can get over to where he's going to be and set up a trap to get him started. And because he is actually weak to poison, I'm going to go ahead and use a poison bait on the trap. The thing is, I'm not seeing any of his tracks. Wait, no, it's the Jagger's. Jagger's. Not particularly what we're looking for. Okay. Ooh. Actually, not a bad idea. Grab these rocks right fast. I might find something better. These are actually pretty useful and just distracting. They don't do a whole lot of damage. As far as I know, none of them really do. So I typically only got the first sightings of his trail. So I typically only keep them around for distraction. Like if you set yourself up in a good spot, you can actually distract it into a trap. Is that it? Is that its target? Looks like we already know where it's heading. Okay, so it looks like it's heading here. Let me look at the map real fast. Oh, no, that's the Jagger. That's actually heading here. So now that we can see him on the map, we'll head over to him. And I think we found our buddies. see. Go ahead and grab one of them to help us out. Every hand helps. Ideally, I would have liked to attempt this. I would have probably been better to attempt this with some help, but I do want to give it a solo go at it. Later on, I might, once I actually get my subscription to PlayStation Plus renewed, I will make a. What is that? Oh, caught a pet. Okay, and looks like our buddy actually managed to talk one of them into helping us. Grab this bright moss. That would be a lot more useful than the rocks, because the bright moss can be used to blind them temporarily. So okay, let's go up here. Alright. I think we're good for the first attempt. Oh, this is... I hope he's not coming down in here, because this is not a good place to fight him. Sad thing is he's in a very tight area. Get my poison gas bomb out. Might have to wait, because it looks like the... Well, no. The Puke might actually help us hurt him. Okay, we just gotta find a good place to begin the fight, because we may have to rely on some of the other larger creatures to help us beat this guy, because he is tough. Okay, we'll track him for a little while to find a good I think he's already spotted us. Ow! Two hits. Two hits.
If you run out of health, you'll faint and be returned to the closest camp. Faint too many times and you'll fail the quest.
Yeah, we're not ready. I don't think even if I had help with somebody at the same level as me at this moment, that we could take him. I might have to legitimately wait until later in the game to even attempt him again, because two hits, that's all it took to end me. Alright, so yeah, since that was a thing, I'll head back to town, and I'll kind of end the mission, and I'll get the item. I'll end the stream, and then I'll get the items I need for tomorrow's live stream. In order to get, I'll have my armor generally finished up, and then we'll move into the next area. Because with as fast as he stomped me, yeah, we just don't have the gear needed for it right now. And for those of them that are able to actually kill this thing without having the necessary gear, I'm not that good. I'll leave the later on, once I get better at the game, I might attempt it, but for the most part, I'll leave the hardcore battles to the masochist of the world, because that was, yeah, 2 hits. I didn't even have a chance to respond. Really, I got underneath his feet, he stepped on me, and that was it. So yeah. Okay.
So now we need to protect the scholars. Let's regroup at the Wildspire Waste.
Alright, let me dump all my extra items out. Alright, so get rid of these because I don't really use those. I'm gonna, before I end it, I'll go ahead and head down here to the room, and I'll show you what I was talking about earlier, where you can put the little creatures that you catch in the wild in your room as a pet. Said it's not really a big deal. It's just for people who like that kind of thing. While I'm at it, I guess I'll go ahead and show you what I've already found. Alright, we got the shepherd hare. Those are those little ferret rabbits you see every so often. These guys aren't too hard to find. You normally find them climbing on trees. The butterflies, they're a little harder to notice because you actually got to be paying attention to where you're at. And as you remember with this thing, I just sort of noticed him. Man, he's an excitable little guy. These guys are hard to notice. They are really scampering all over the place, even in the wild. Those guys are actually one of the easiest to catch. Besides that one, this is probably the rarest one I've got. Paratoads. Okay, if you've not played the game yet, when you come up on one of these and it tells you to push circle, don't do it. Not unless you're wanting to create a trap. Because those things will pop. When they blow up, they'll paralyze you. These guys, you smack them or you touch them and they'll drop that green orb which heals you, so they're kind of useful. Oh, there they are. I can put ants in my house. I think not. Another bug, and then these guys. These guys are fun. I mean, they look like a massive electricity, which is essentially what they are, but when you touch them or hit them, they will blind. They're like a flashbang, basically. They'll blind the enemy and stun them for a little bit. Alright. So I'll go ahead and put my little bird back out, and I'll call it done. I'll call this broadcast done. See you next time.